could keep on dancing on the surface, 'cause I still put that pressure on you.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Spoiler Warning Podcast. This is review number 721 with a review of Aftersun. I'm Christopher Schnese.
And I'm Stephen Miller.
And if you're joining us for the first time, the Spoiler Warning Podcast is a weekly film review program. Each week in the show, we're going to dive in, debate, discuss, and argue over the latest films coming to a theater near you. Though I'm not quite certain when this film's going to come to a theater near you. It is currently Halloween night. We are recording this. Stephen and I saw this film last week at a little SF film screening here in the city, and I think we were probably assuming that it was maybe going to go more wide this weekend, but even on the A24 website, it just says pre-order the film. So yeah. No idea when this is going to come to folks, but I think Stephen and I have already decided we're still going to have a spoiler conversation for this film because it's definitely going to require it. But, you know, we'll try to get as many thoughts as we can out pre-spoilers for anybody who isn't able to see this film yet. But, yeah. How you doing tonight, Stephen?
Doing pretty good. Have you thought yet about the fact that tonight we are reviewing a movie with a lead whose character name is Callum and a movie with a character named Colm co-starring an actor named Colin? Has that broken your brain yet?
No, it hadn't broken my brain yet, but
right.
But yeah, it's definitely brain breakable, I guess.
Yep. No, I'm doing good. I'm happy. So we are recording this a week after watching Aftersun. We both attended a screening that was hosted by SF Film that had the writer-director Charlotte Wells in attendance. And so last week I was kind of like fresh off the movie and I had a million thoughts. And this week I'm going to try to conjure them back, sipping a little brew, trying to get myself back in the touchy-feely place that I was a week ago.
You haven't had a good cry yet today, so you're needing to find your way back.
Exactly, yeah, but I'll get there.
Okay, good.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well myself. I'm hoping, given that it is Halloween, that the loud as hell buzzer that is my doorbell is not going to be ringing every 5 minutes with kids wanting candy, because like a bad residential area liver dweller, I did not put out a bowl of candy for children. So we'll see if they get me back for that.
Yeah, our apartment complex let you sign up to say that you are an apartment that will have candy, and then they're like distributing a list of what units kids can go to.
That's cool.
I don't know if Joanna signed us off or not, but I am in my office anyway, so I'm pretty sure I'm immune no matter what.
That is a good way to do it. I know that there's sometimes when we were growing up, sometimes churches would do a thing where like everybody drives to the parking lot and just opens up your trunk and like kids just walk around to all the trunks to get candy. Which
I think John Wayne Gacy used to attend those, right?
Wait, who?
Serial killer murdered a bunch of
You
people
said
dressed up like a clown.
You said Gacy, okay.
Yeah.
Well, we're not here to talk about serial killer clowns or Halloween. We're here to talk about, this little trip down memory lane that is Aftersun. So what do you say we get started, Stephen?
Let's do it.
All right, we're going to take a listen to the trailer for Aftersun and then come back and give everyone a review.
I love you.
Love you. Dad, he's good. Oh my god, he's doing some real slow motion ninja moves. Think you'll ever move back to Scotland?
No.
Why?
And there's this feeling, once you leave where you're from, that you don't totally belong there again. You know, I want you to know that you can talk to me about anything. Whatever parties you go to, boys you meet, drugs you take.
Dad! Oh my god, what even is that?
These are my moves.
No, that's so embarrassing.
That's not embarrassing. You okay through there?
I don't know, I guess. I just feel a bit down or something.
What do you mean?
tired and down and feels like your bones don't work, like you're sinking.
You never know where you'll end up, though. You can live wherever you want to live. Be whoever you want to be. You have time.
All right, so that was the trailer for Aftersun. Sophie reflects on the shared joy and private melancholy of a holiday she took with her father 20 years earlier. Memories real and imagined fill the gaps between as she tries to reconcile the father she knew with the man she didn't. Stephen Miller, what did you think of Aftersun?
So I was a little worried when I sat down to watch Aftersun. I think we discussed a few of the reasons why shortly after watching it. One is just I have not really... I mean, I've attended packed screenings before, but I've always managed to get like a reserved seat somewhere where I'm not really close to other people. You know, Alamo is a known quantity at this point, and a like fully packed showing in the Roxy where you're just like smack dab in the middle of everyone. I was already like a little bit on edge, and then we did not have the most amazing neighbors or the most amazing, like the start of the movie, people were shuffling in maybe like 5-10 minutes into the movie starting. And so flashlights were, you know, shining in my face. The guy next to me was being rather loud, and he loudly opined that he did not like the movie, and he left halfway through only to come back because his hat was under a seat and he was looking for it. So there were a lot of factors that could hurt, you know, what is a very like delicate experience, you know, a movie that you kind of want to be, it feels like a headphone movie, right? And yet I completely adored Aftersun. I like fell head over heels for this movie. I think it is 1,000% my shit. It's very much in the line of like Andrea Arnold movies or Sean Baker movies. I think of it like a Leave No Trace, right? Like a daughter's reflection on her father who is there for her and loves her, but then also has his own demons that he's wrestling with and maybe can't provide quite the way she wants him to. It is a honey boy that I'm still allowed to like, you know, that isn't tainted by the actual narrative behind it, you know, like a complicated look at a relationship and kind of a look into the past that feels like a memory and an act of therapy, and maybe an act of forgiveness is too strong a word because I don't think there is a thing to forgive here necessarily, but it's like that complicated feeling of remembering a relationship to a parent who cannot be all the things that a parent might want to be, but also identifying the parts of them that loved you. I just found this movie so moving, and it does such an excellent job of being naturalistic, putting you directly in the moment, not feeling a need to explain anything, you know, not feeling a need to subtitle thick Scottish accents, you know, when need be. You are just there. You are picking up on the relationship as they slowly reveal it to you. And I just think absorbing it through osmosis was completely beautiful. It had this, without getting into spoilers, I think the movie feels like a memory with more feelings bubbling beneath the surface, even before you have any explicit clues that might make you wonder what that is. I just found it extraordinarily moving, and I think so much has to do with the two lead actors. You know, Paul Mescal is going to get a lot of credit. He's already getting some awards attention, I believe, as Callum, the father, who is quite young. I believe he's celebrating his like 31st or 32nd birthday, like fairly young for being the father of an 11-year-old daughter, which is one context clue right off the bat that maybe their relationship doesn't have quite the providing nature that you sometimes think of when you think of a father-daughter relationship to have. But then I really just adored the character of Sophie, played by Frankie Corio, who is just such a natural, you know, child actor who you believe her as this character who loves her dad and is kind of sort of managing her dad's feelings at the same time. And she has mood swings. Like, she'll be bright, she'll be in a sad mood, she'll be pissed off. Everything she does just feels like she and Paul Mescal have spent like years together and know each other really, really, really intimately. I just thought watching them interact and have these kind of nothing conversations, like these playful interactions, was just so much a joy that when the gut punches start to hit, like when the movie starts to reveal a little bit more about what it is doing, I felt myself tearing up multiple times in this movie, even before anything worth tearing up about was happening, just at the memory of being a kid and going on vacation and how the little glimpses of real life that you catch just by like seeing other people behaving, seeing older kids and learning a little bit about life through watching them and trying to have social interactions. It just had so much that made me feel very emotional, and then it lands. I think it sticks the landing in just a phenomenal way. So I love this movie. It's so quiet and understated. I would not fault anyone for not finding the same love. Like, it is very much as a movie that you either gel with or you don't. But to me, this is absolutely one of my favorite movies of the year.
Nice. Yeah, so I had an extremely delayed reaction to this film. This movie ends with a lot of silence and just the sound of people in a room just sobbing.
Yeah.
it was like I was scared to get up afterwards because I thought I might slip on all the tears that were just rolling down that floor. And in the moment, I did not have that reaction to it. For whatever reason, I didn't connect on this film. And I think part of the problem with my during the watching of the film disconnection was that I was watching the film from the wrong point of view. And I think that unintentionally, I watched the film the same way the filmmaker lived through the experience, where it wasn't until afterwards when I reflected back upon it that I gained that appreciation for what it was doing. Now, I also want to give a disclaimer, which will be more important when we get into spoilers. The filmmaker was in attendance. She said this was inspired by a trip she took to Turkey with her father. Later on in this episode, I am going to attribute things to the person who made this film as if she is the character.
Yeah.
I do not know anything about the real life story of the filmmaker, but I will talk about the story talking about the filmmaker, and I want the audience to have that abstraction because I'm going to make a lot of assumptions about the current state of mind of the person and state of minds of other people in that person's life. And I just want to get that out, that I don't have a way of talking about this film without linking those things in my head.
Yeah, well, I think it makes sense because even without going into spoilers, throughout the film, it is interspersed with the adult character of Sophie, who is clearly reflecting and clearly has something to do with film and art and is watching footage. So that this idea, even if it is entirely a character, there is a implied character of this movie who is the filmmaker making the movie as an autobiographical experience. Even if Charlotte Wells didn't actually make it genuinely autobiographical, I think it's totally fair to speak and think about it as if it were.
Yeah, which to be fair, makes all the annoying... Steven and I have this thing where we go to places where a filmmaker is in attendance, and everybody in the audience afterwards during the Q&A asks questions that are they're one of two things. One is, let me ask a really, really dumb question that shouldn't be asked, or let me try to sound smart while I'm asking a question to let you know that I've taken one film course in my life.
Which is why there are no good questions.
Yeah, there aren't. You really just go, thank you for coming. I loved your film. I'm going to sit down now. That's just what you do. But I think some of the questions that felt like the filmmaker was skirting around because of how not annoying, but like how sort of like, don't try to read in too much to the meaning of this one thing. Afterwards, thinking back, I started to think that maybe the question wasn't just, I don't want to talk about this thing. It was maybe I'm not able to talk about this in a room full of people because the answer to that question has too much meaning behind it, and this is not the place that I want to have that conversation, right? Like, because once again, I cannot separate the filmmaker from this character, and what certain visual themes in the film I think mean in what feels like a very obvious way once you've had time to sit and think about the film and discuss it a little bit. So I think in the end, this is a very, very beautiful film that is really a person that is at a place in their life reflecting on a moment in time which may or may not be the last time they saw somebody happy and just trying to think back on like what that moment meant in the time. And I think that like part of the reason why I didn't fully connect with this film at first is because I was watching from young Sophie's eyes, and it was kind of a bunch of strung together moments that didn't have a lot of meaning in the moment. And at like, you know, when I watch a film, you know, like 8th grade or something, right? Like I am putting myself in the place of the 8th grader, right? Like I am watching the world from that person's, and I'm experiencing the film from their eyes. This film is experienced from the adult thinking back on what she saw as a child and recontextualizing it with an adult brain. So I was not feeling the film as an adult until after it was done, and I went back through it and began to like dissect a bunch of things. And I think that this is an incredibly beautiful film that I watched incorrectly the first time through, and really like I look at the dialogue that she is trying to have as a filmmaker, and like this is a beautiful and tragic story that like I think is hugely impactful. I feel so sad about some of the questions she was asked in context of what I assume may or may not be real life things that she has experienced. And yeah, I really greatly appreciate the experience of getting to see this film, even if I didn't have the waterworks that most of the people in the audience had in the moment and had to like sit and reflect on it after the fact.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And even for me, I mean, I loved it in the moment and, you know, teared up a couple times, but it was honestly over the next few days of just having it in my brain, it felt more and more moving to me.
Yeah.
Which is the kind of movie that I love, right? It's a movie that kind of like nestles inside of you and then keeps like working on you for a while. It's interesting because I feel like it would be like revisionist of me to say that while I was watching all of this movie, I was seeing it from the, you know, past tense, like a future adult looking back watching it. I don't know if I felt that the whole time so much as like it made me like at first that feeling is just nostalgia, right? This is a clearly set in the past, right? It's set in a time where you would go on vacation and do whatever there was there to do. You know, you play an arcade game, you go to the karaoke night, you lay around at the pool, there are older kids, you know, hanging out, and you join them because what else are you going to do? You're in this place, you know. And to me there's a very nostalgic feeling just about the ability to be bored with someone. It's like a thing that we kind of don't have that much anymore.
Yeah.
We can still be bored, but being bored is more frantic, right? It's like all the information at your disposal and you're scrolling, right? It's very different from laying around, making conversation about nothing, right? Making conversation about whatever's on your mind, playing with whatever there is to do at this, you know, mid-level hotel that you're staying at. And I just found that already very nostalgic in a way that felt like a memory that made me feel emotional. And so then when it became more clear that the whole film is structured as a memory, I think like I was already tapping into my own feelings about like on a much different level than what maybe the filmmaker is grappling with, like the little things you lose when you know, when you stop having the innocence of childhood and you start having the kind of perspective of being an adult. Yeah, I don't have a lot more to unpack there, except I found the very idea of this being a story about a child set, 2 decades ago, in a time when I was also a child, to already be inherently emotional, even without necessarily having picked up on other clues yet.
Yeah. And I think too, like one of the I'll call it a good example of a question somebody from the audience asked was like, how did you get performances out of this child? And one of the things the filmmaker was talking about was, this child actor was sort of in a way incapable of, not incapable, sorry, wrong word, but like would actively avoid getting too emotional at moments, right? So it's kind of like, I can see, like, in the grand context of like watching this film afterwards, I 100% understand why you would, like, obviously this child actress is super cute, super charismatic, like star material right there. Like she the camera loves hanging out with her. But on top of that, in the context of this world, the character is a little bit oblivious or avoidant of the stakes of different moments and what potentially her father might be going through. And I think that, like, in a way, it's like, is it brilliant acting or like a fault of the character of this person that made them perfect to play this role in this moment? And it's like, there's things where I'm like, man, it's like, I can see why she was chosen for this role, depending on how like the chemistry reads and everything went. Like, it just seems like that, like that's exactly what you want from the child in this moment, because it sells that, which in a way may have been why I disconnected in the moment. But once again, looking back on it, I'm like, oh, it's friggin' makes so much sense.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very it's a movie that has a story it wants to tell you, and it does it by showing you a character who seems oblivious to it or is dancing around it. Like, I wouldn't say she's always oblivious. Like, there are little things that she does that seem like, I am going to cheer my dad up, or we just had an interaction that was a little awkward and I'm going to zag, like I'm going to do a thing that like changes the subject or pokes at him in a way that, like, to the best of my ability is going to make him feel better. Like, I think she has a little bit of that awareness, but for the most part, the movie is about what it isn't telling you directly, save, and I always love this, just like I loved Honey Boy so much, and Honey Boy is a mix of like realism, like naturalism, and then tiny little flights of fancy, tiny little moments where the thing couldn't possibly have happened that way, or you couldn't have known that it happened that way, and yet the filmmaker is just giving you a glimpse of it. This movie, I think, with the exception of one very impactful scene very late in the movie, this one sticks with the naturalism more, but it has little muted moments where you're like, that is an artistic flourish, and I love it because it reminds me that I am dealing with a crafted memory, not necessarily a documentary narrative. And I just thought it, for my own taste, where I really like when they don't just say the quiet part out loud, I love this movie's commitment to not saying everything it wanted to say. Which is why the Q&A, which had a few okay questions, but for the most part was people being like, hey, what does this symbolize? What did it mean by this? What did it mean when you did this? I was like, why are you trying to break this movie for me?
Yeah. Though my favorite is the question about the title.
Yeah. That was
which is pretty amazing, that response.
Yeah, it was. I still enjoy whatever made up meaning of the title I would craft for this, because I feel like there's plenty of ways you can go here. And the filmmaker can say whatever she wants about the origins of the title and what Aftersun means, in Scotland. She speaks English. Like, she understands that it is an ambiguous phrase, that after is clearly in the title. Like, I I don't believe her when she acts like it was just a like working title that stuck and it's a happy coincidence. I think there's somewhere along the way she knew that you can bring what you want to bring into the title, and she liked it that way.
Yeah. But it is also great for like what its reference is to, for people like for an American audience has no context at all, but for broader audiences, it has some pretty straightforward meanings.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else that you want to talk about before we get into spoilers?
The only thing that we haven't explicitly said yet that I think is worth mentioning is the film, and I'm sure other movies do this. It almost feels like a trope in some movies where it includes moments where the character, the daughter Sophie, is filming her father and like playing back and watching footage. And there's this idea of looking at someone through a screen and this kind of home movie quality of pieces of it that just like completely wrecked me emotionally. It played me like a fiddle. Like it just knew exactly how to get to my emotions, and I think it does it beautifully. And unlike a lot of movies that kind of would just throw some home video footage somewhere for a powerful emotional moment, this one really lingers and I think makes it part of the story and makes it part of the budding filmmaker who is loosely inspiring this work. So I feel like it does it well. It pulls the heartstrings just right, but it doesn't feel cheap the way that occasionally that move feels cheap. I think it feels like really, really earned.
I will say one more thing too. You kind of inadvertently reminded me of it. Like, one of the funny things about this being a story that is intentionally about memory, and even in the description on IMDb, it's filling in the gaps of where the memory is. Like part of it is real memory and part of it is filled in memory. And there were a few moments that like made me scratch my head in the film where I was like they feel like continuity errors. But then when you think about it in the sense of that, like, no, she is filling in the gaps and that is okay. Like it's purposely, the continuity errors are actually part of the process and not, and specifically I want to talk about, for most of this film, the father has a cast on his arm.
Yeah.
And there's a moment where he dives into a pool to take photos with an underwater camera. And my first thought was like, I don't think you're supposed to get casts wet. And then like in the next scene, he's taking a shower and holding his cast outside of the shower. And I'm like, yeah, you're not supposed to get the casts wet. And then it was like, but like afterwards I was like, yeah, she's just remembering this moment of like, yeah, we were taking underwater photos, and she's probably not going to remember if her dad was literally like holding one arm in the air. Nobody on the podcast knows the motion I'm doing, but like imagine him like ducking underwater and taking like a weird angle photo while he holds one hand in the air. Like she's not going to remember that. She's going to remember when I dove in and dad dove in after me and stuff like that. And yeah, it worked, but it was kind of in the moment. I was like, what? You can't do that with a cast.
Yeah, and I think I can't think of other examples, but there are clear examples when the movie is taking more artistic liberty in filling in the blanks of what her father's doing. But I think those little continuity issues are part of what make the movie feel a little spellbinding, feel like a memory. Like a little piece of you is like, I'm not just watching in real time, a daughter bond with her father. Like something more is happening, and I think it has an interesting effect. Yeah. I wanted to say, so in spoilers, we are going to talk about a musical moment in this movie, which is kind of clearly the centerpiece of the film, or at least maybe the like thesis statement of the film. But there are actually two music moments that made me tear up. And one that I feel like is almost as emotional, for me at least, was little Sophie in karaoke singing Losing My Religion off key, but bless her heart, waiting for her dad to come up and join her in karaoke. And the fact that the movie just lets the whole song, like the whole thing play out the way it does, that was the closest to 8th grade for me that I felt in this moment, where I really felt like I am now in the mind of a girl who is putting herself out there and all of the competing feelings that are attendant to that. yeah, it just got me. It got me in the 8th grade place. And most of this movie is striking a different chord than that.
Yeah. It's actually funny that you bring that up because, I've already let slip that in the moment this film wasn't completely gelling with me as much as it did when I like dissected it after the fact. But also, we already mentioned that we saw this at a screening, but like this is probably the first time in like quite a while that we have literally been sitting almost directly next to each other during a screening. In this case, your wife was between us, but like this is the first time they were actually sitting together. And in that scene, I was like, I wonder if Stephen thinks this was as good as 8th grade.
It is different.
yeah, it's much different.
It's different than 8th grade. I think it is. We'll get to it when we get to verdicts, which I guess we're about to do. I think it is intentionally more difficult than 8th grade.
Yeah.
And that is a virtue, but also 8th grade is so good at not being difficult.
Oh, all right. Should we get to verdicts, Stephen?
Yep.
If you're going to give us a must-see, recommend with the caveat, wait for rental, pass the caveat, or must avoid, what would you give it?
Must-see. Again, if this isn't in my top 3 or 4 of the year, it means a whole lot of really good shit happened in the next couple months. I just love this movie.
Yeah, I'm going to give it a must-see as well. Even with my sort of delayed reaction to it, I think it's a film that, it sits with you, I last weekend we had planned to record 3 episodes back to back. We started a little bit later than expected, and we were sort of losing steam by the time we were about to sit down and start Aftersun. And we pulled an audible and decided to hold it off for a week and do the recording now. And I was actually like pretty grateful because I wanted more time to sit with this film. And I think it is a film that has sat with me for a while and, has kind of forced me to think about it and sort of deal with sort of the ramifications and the mindsets of the character, if not the filmmaker. And it's not often that, a film is that stimulating, like sometimes it's thinky enough to make you really want to think about it. But this is like a different kind of thinky, right? It's a feely thinky sort of kind of thing where you're like, man, that sort of just is still a weight that I am carrying after having seen it and after having sat with it. And like, it's not every day that you get to have that experience.
Yeah. It's interesting because when we were starting to record, I even mentioned it's been a week and I'm trying to like put myself back in the place I was when I was watching it. This isn't the kind of movie where every detail is like living in my head and I'm just recalling certain scenes over and over again. It's like the feeling of the movie has been living somewhere in my body for the last week. And like I can tap into the feeling of the movie very easily.
And that place is your heart.
Yeah.
And your cheer ducks. As we mentioned, we are probably going to have like a good long dissection of this that is going to be full-blown spoilers. But for now, if you haven't had a chance to see this film, which I assume is most of the people listening, you should kind of like pause on this. Please don't listen forward for now. Come back later after you've had a chance to see Aftersun. But for now, Stephen Miller, if people want to find you throughout the week, where can they do that?
People can find me at twitter.com/sdavidmiller or sdavidmiller.com.
People can find me at ChristopherInRealLife.com or Twitter.com/ChristopherIRL. You can find the podcast over at thespoilerwarning.com where you can get a bunch of the back episodes of the show. If you want to subscribe to the show, you can do so in Overcast, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, or wherever podcasts are found. If you want to know the episodes go live, you can follow us at Twitter.com/SpoilerWarning, Facebook.com/TheSpoilerWarning, or Instagram.com/TheSpoilerWarning. If you want to get hold of us directly, you can send an email to fans@thespoilerwarning.com, or you can use the contact form on our site. Music for this episode will come from a track selected from Artlist.io, so hopefully you are enjoying that. Completely chosen at random song. And that music is going to fade up now. And when that music fades out, we're going to be in full-blown spoilers. So watch out, go check out this film, and come back and join us for that conversation. See you in a sec. All right, we are back. This is the after part of our review of Aftersun, and we are talking full-blown spoilers. Stephen Miller, where would you like to get started?
I don't know. I mean, there's the... Should we just dive into kind of the central thing hanging over the movie? You know, the heavy idea at the center of it, which is that, and I'm going to phrase it my way. So I have actually not done any digging into the life of Charlotte Wells. You know, I don't know what autobiographical things are out there necessarily. So I'm speaking only in the context of the movie, right? In the context of the movie, it is very clear that adult Sophie no longer has a relationship with Paul Mescal's character, Callum. She no longer has access to him, even though she wants to. It is clear that he was wrestling with demons even at the time, that he has struggled with depression, that he has been very sad, that she wants to reach him and can't. That is the text of the film. I would say the very strong subtext is that he has passed away and that he very possibly took his own life not that long after the events of the film, or at least started a downward spiral of depression where she couldn't reach him anymore, and then eventually that ended. You know, it could be a story of addiction and how you lose someone in that manner. It could be a story of depression, if someone just... It could frankly be a Leave No Trace type story where like this person retreats into themselves to a point where she, as a daughter, just had to let him go. You know, but I think it is very clear, even if not explicitly stated, that suicide is a like strong implication of the story.
Yeah.
And I don't know when I started to pick up on that implication. There are a few hints early in the movie that Callum is, if not depressed, he's like unhappy with his life, or his life isn't really going the way he wants it to, that he is trying to put on an excited face occasionally for his daughter, but that something creeps into him occasionally and just puts him in a different mood. Yeah, and I'll let you talk about it before we go into the big musical number that I would say comes as close as anything to actually making it explicit.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that obviously there's a lot of visual imagery that alludes to suicide, and I think that, you know, that could just be metaphor, and it could be a lot of things. I personally think that the rug itself is the last piece of the puzzle. Just the choice to purchase a rug that you can't afford because you know you'll never have to pay it back, I think was kind of like the last piece of the puzzle that I needed to like solidify that thought in my head. And the fact that she has that, it's sitting under her bed, she puts her feet on it every morning when she gets up, or in the middle of the night when she gets up, like it's her trying to get back to this moment. I think that, you know, like we'll get into the dance number at the end, but like I kind of tried to allude to at the beginning that like I think this is really a film about like you know, in the non-spoiler part of the review, I said it's the last time that maybe she ever saw her father happy. And I think it's the last time she saw her happy and alive, or him happy and alive. And that's sort of what it is. On top of that, I think that the adult character of Sophie is the reason she is reflecting back on this now. Not that she hasn't carried with her for her whole... Obviously, she has a bunch of his stuff, has the tapes, but I think she maybe hasn't gone back to review them that much. But I think that she, as an adult, is also, you know, dealing with depression and her own demons. This is also her birthday, probably her 32nd birthday or whatever. Birthday. Yeah, like, so it's, I think that there is a lot of her trying to understand how she got to the place she's in now, you know, in the contemporary sense of the word, with where her dad was at the time, and her looking back and seeing the signs. And then, you know, in that dance number, I think it's her trying to bring him back from where she is now, right? Like she sees like, she, like at the time she didn't want to dance with her dad, right? That's like, you know, one thing that like I'm not a very public dancer, you know, like I'll dance around my apartment and stuff, you know, by myself when I'm alone in private, but like I don't like being on display. And like in the moment of like the child, like her dad's like, come dance with me, and like he's just like, this is his outlet, and it's like you know, you don't know whether he is trying to be happy or actually being happy in that moment. And she's just like, Dad, I don't want to do that, this is stupid. And I think she's kind of thinking back to that moment, and like that was her chance to actually enjoy and have fun with him in that moment, right before they said goodbye for the last time the next day at the airport and stuff like that. And I think that there's just like so much stuff there that's like incredibly heavy, and it's like you can see the filmmaker, whether or not this is the real life story and what she went through, the filmmaker is dealing with the ideas of that. And it's just, you know, I think it's a really powerful, whatever it's doing, it is firing on all cylinders. And it's like, it's hard to not look at all these moments differently by the end of the film, which is obviously what they're trying to do. But then also think about the adult version of Sophie and how she is feeling about herself as an adult, even though the adult version of her is not really a character in this film until the very end. It's like a double recontextualization of the memories, because it's her trying to reach into the past and grab onto these moments that she maybe didn't understand or appreciate at the time, and maybe is seeing in herself now as an adult, and kind of just trying to deal with that. So I think it's really, really beautiful. And you know, I did one of those things where I started to Google it, and because there wasn't anything in the top result, I just closed the browser and was like, gone, I'm out of here.
Yeah, because it's, I mean, you know, I don't want to keep harping on another movie, but like, and I've mentioned it a couple times, but Honey Boy, you know, was easily my number one in 2019. You know, the year that it came out, and that was a movie that very explicitly was saying, I'm going to grapple with the difficult, painful memory of a parent, you know, and that didn't make it subtext. That made it very clearly text. You know, the main character is Lucas Hedges is in therapy at the beginning of the movie, and he's talking about his childhood, and it is making it very clear that it is autobiographical. And so I don't know if you followed the recent news cycles where Shia LaBeouf talked about how like his dad is nothing like that movie, he made it all up or whatever. Like, that is a movie that is actually damaged, I would say, by the lack of authenticity, because it is saying very directly, this is authentic, this is a true story, this is me, you know, look how brave I am. I would say Aftersun is, even if nothing like this ever happened, I don't think this movie is damaged at all by that, because it is so much about letting you bring what you want to bring into it, and doing this character study and this this feeling, you know. And again, we both have similar theories over the basis of this movie, but even if it is only a metaphor for no longer being close to a parent, or the last time that you had that kind of innocent connection with them, the last time you could dance with them because you had a, I don't know, rebellious teenage year, and you started to resent your dad for moving far away and not being able to spend time with you anymore, and you fell apart. Like, even if it were purely metaphor, I think the emotion is still so powerful there. And then, of course, the strongest interpretation of it, which is also the one that I hold, makes it so much more profoundly sad, that moment of the dance. And so the song in this scene, which anyone who's listening now hopefully has watched the movie already, is Under Pressure. And I don't remember how much of the song plays, but the part that I really remember that starts to cut between her in real life, 11-year-old Sophie dancing with her dad on their last day together, and the strobe lit nightclub of her memory, or of the shared depression that they both experienced. You know, you can read in however you want to what that means. The bridge is starting to happen where Freddie Mercury is singing can't we give ourselves one more chance? Why can't we give love one more chance? Why can't we give love one more chance? This is our last dance. This is our last dance. This is ourselves under pressure. And like, if she had written that song, it would be the most explicit description of what the movie is about. And the fact that the song speaks for itself there, it is just like one of those miracles of finding the perfect song to put in the perfect moment. And the director even addressed that at the end of the movie, where she said her editor told her, if you can't get under pressure, then we don't have a movie. Yeah. And I think that was hyperbolic, but I think it is such a perfect encapsulation of this one release where we're going to be like, now the movie is going to, she can't say it out loud, but she can let the movie sing it out loud, right? And I think there's just something so beautiful and heart-wrenching about that moment, and it kind of reverberates backwards, where Callum, the night where he doesn't answer the door, when she comes home and he's not there, or he's not answering the door, and it shows him diving into waves, like lapping waves in the dead of night, him smoking a cigarette and dancing outside when she can't see him anymore, him crying on the rug when she's not there to see that he's crying. All of these moments that we didn't see, I feel like that under pressure scene like echoes back into all of it and makes you feel the kind of crushing blow of this dad who's taken on a kind of like mythical status in her life, because he's not a real person she can ask questions to anymore. He is a mystery for her to kind of fill in. And I don't know. I'm not saying anything you aren't saying already, but the feeling that she clearly struggles with some form of depression or guilt. I don't know how much her feelings are tied to her father and how much is her being afraid of, having that feeling passed down and thinking about her father as like, how do I at this age avoid the same kind of despair, that I know he must have been struggling with. But all of that, I don't know. I just think it reverberates through the film backward in a really, really powerful way.
Yeah. There's another scene, one of the other examples of the use of the DV camcorder and like the recorded memories. That was, it's a really nice, artistic flourish where it's like you are watching a TV that is set up on a dresser next to a mirror, and you have what the camera is seeing, you have the reflection of what's happening in the room, and it's kind of like this combination of this, the recorded memory and the other memory. But another thing that you get in that moment is all of the father's books on the shelf. And they're all like meditation and like all these things that are like clearly him trying to center himself some way, like trying to get his emotions under control and stuff like that. And there's like a lot of things like that too, where it's like, obviously you see him and it's played for a joke of him like doing Tai Chi randomly while they're just in Turkey for no reason. But then like when that's put with like all the other, it might as well be like a stack of like self-help books or self-help books. But there's like little things like that where it's like, who knows if she's trying to take up all that stuff as an adult too as well. But it's just there's a bunch of little moments like that which were really nice to sit and just like watch all those kind of things. Which who knows if she actually remembers those things or just imagines those books as part of why he was just doing the Tai Chi.
Right. Yeah, because that's the thing. Even early in the movie, he's doing that kind of thing, and I would say early in the movie, I was expecting this to be more of the story of the dad who had me a little too young, who probably wasn't ready for the responsibility, and forgiving him of his shortcomings. That's kind of the template that you assume you're entering into, when you watch this movie, or at least I did. And so all of those things that he's doing, like Tai Chi, at the time I was feeling more as like the quirks of this guy who is still trying to find himself, right? Who's still trying to figure out who he is, having this 11-year-old daughter along for the ride. And then, yeah, it just kind of evolves over the movie into being another, I don't want to say clue because I don't think the movie is a puzzle. Like, again, I think whatever the fictional reality in the movie is doesn't matter as much as the feeling of memory and of trying to understand someone that you can no longer ask directly. But it does just kind of, all those details become breadcrumbs that you look back on later in a really powerful way. So
yeah.
I also, we haven't explicitly mentioned this yet, but after the big, Bowie, Freddie Mercury under pressure scene, which is, I know everyone is going to say this, but it is clearly the scene of the movie. Like it's definitely the most emotional one. The release, after a whole movie of kind of building up to it quietly. There is this amazing final little touch of fantastic realism where she is going through security, saying goodbye to him and then leaving in the airport. And then he walks away and opens the door and is entering back into that nightclub, directly from the airport. And I think it's just it's the perfect amount of fantastical to remind you of the memory palace that this movie is living in without going full on, look at the metaphor, look at what I'm trying to explain to you. I thought it was just like the perfect amount.
It's also that, another drop in the bucket for like that hallway is clearly like an ethereal hallway. Right. I mean? Like that hallway is not the actual airport. It's like he is the only person and he walks back there and the door goes to a place that's not actually there. So it's kind of, it's another drop in that bucket.
Definitely.
Any last happy thoughts about the film?
It's interesting because even though we're talking about the meaning of the film, and that depending on your interpretation, it is either extremely bittersweet or very, very depressing. But my experience of the movie while watching it, and even in the days after and carrying it with me, has not been depressing, because even though the movie is framed around an adult looking back and trying to find answers, the movie frames about being not resolved, not having closure. I don't think the tone of the movie feels like a deep aching wound. The tone of the movie feels more melancholy about it. It feels more like I have lived with this for a long time and I'm ruminating now on how it reflects on my own life, but I'm not asking you to receive it as a black hole of sorrow, I feel like the movie is, if not uplifting, it has so many human character moments. It has so many Florida Project-y type interactions between Sophie and Callum that I just don't remember it as depressing. Like, that isn't the final feeling I have. I think it is a beautiful, simultaneously uplifting and sorrowful thing, and that is kind of my sweet spot when it comes to art.
Yeah. Maybe it's just the way I I connected after the fact that I mostly come down on the depressing side. But it's still beautiful either way. Cool. Well, I think that's probably going to do it for our review and spoiler conversation about Aftersun. Now we have to go off and talk about another film, which is both funny and potentially depressing as well.
Yep.
We'll see you in our review of The Banshees of Inisherin. Inisherin.
Whatever you say, I'm going to one-up it.